The massive council chamber buzzed with voices. 12 different alien species sat around the large round table. The ceiling rose high above them, decorated with symbols of peace from across the galaxy. Ambassador George Harris adjusted his tie and looked at his notes one last time. For 3 months, he had been at these peace talks. 3 long months of sitting in this room, listening to the Vraxian Empire make bigger and bigger demands. The Vraxians were tall, gray-skinned beings with 4 arms and sharp teeth that showed when they spoke. Their lead negotiator, War Chief Kragov, stood at his place at the table, his red eyes fixed on George. "We require these human colonies as buffer zones," Kragov said, pointing at the star map. "This is our final offer." The council chamber went quiet. Everyone looked at George. The human colonies, Kragov pointed to, were home to millions of people. George closed his folder slowly. He took a deep breath and stood up. "I appreciate the time this council has given to these talks," he said calmly. "But I must inform you all that humanity will be leaving the negotiations." The chamber erupted in shocked voices. The bird-like Aviri representatives fluttered their wings in alarm. The silicon-based Quargians clicked their crystal joints nervously. Zolthep, the blue-skinned diplomat who led the council, rose from his seat. His 3 eyes blinked rapidly in confusion. "Ambassador Harris, please," Zolthep said, raising his long-fingered hands. "Walking away now would be most unwise. The Vraxian Empire has a history of forceful actions when diplomacy fails." George nodded politely. "We understand the risks, Chairperson Zolthep." The Vraxian war chief laughed, a harsh sound that echoed in the chamber. "So humans choose war. Many have made this mistake before. None exist now." "We haven't chosen war," George replied, his voice still calm. "Humanity will handle this differently." The telepathic Melosian elder, her skin glowing with anxiety, sent a thought that everyone in the room could hear. "We sense no fear from you, human. This is unusual." George smiled slightly. "That's because we're not afraid, Elder Sureth. Thank you all for your efforts." The human delegation began gathering their materials. The 5 men and women worked quickly and quietly, as if they had practiced this moment. "This is madness," shouted the Drulkan ambassador, his tentacles waving wildly. "The Vraxians have destroyed 3 civilizations in the last century alone." George looked at his fellow humans. Patricia Lee, his assistant, gave a small nod. They had discussed this possibility for weeks. "Perhaps those civilizations should have tried a different approach," George said. He turned to Kragov with a steady gaze. "We'll be in touch." The human delegation walked toward the exit. The council chamber fell into chaos. Some representatives shouted for them to stop. Others began arguing among themselves. The Vraxians watched with hungry smiles. "One more chance, humans," called Zolthep desperately. "Return to the table." George paused at the doorway. "We appreciate the council's work for peace, but sometimes you need to step away to find the right path forward." He nodded respectfully. "Good day." As the doors closed behind the humans, Commander Diane Powell looked at George. "It's done then." "Yes," George said. "Contact Admiral Nelson. Tell him to activate Protocol Thunderbolt." "And the council?" Patricia asked, looking back at the closed doors. "They'll panic for a while," George replied as they walked down the corridor. "But they'll learn something important today." "What's that?" asked Protocol Officer Henry Green. George's face grew serious. "That humanity doesn't negotiate from fear, and we don't make empty threats." The human delegation entered their ship, ready to show the galaxy exactly what happened when humans walked away from peace talks. Diplomat Susan Ward moved quietly through the empty halls of the council building. It was late, and most species had retired to their quarters. She looked over her shoulder before entering a small meeting room. Inside, Katrine waited. The bird-like Aviri representative's feathers were flat against her body, a sign of worry. "Thank you for meeting me," Katrine said. Her voice was musical, but strained. "The council is in chaos." Susan nodded. I expected that. Katrine brought up a holographic display showing Earth's history. We've been studying your species. You fought wars among yourselves for centuries before reaching unity. Yes, Susan said simply. We know war well. Katrine's bright eyes blinked rapidly. That's what worries us. The Vraxians are already moving their war fleets toward your outer colonies. Susan watched the display change to show the movement of Vraxian ships. She didn't look surprised. What I don't understand, Katrine said, is why you humans aren't afraid. The Vraxians have destroyed entire planets. At that moment, the door opened. The Melosian elder Serath floated in, her translucent body glowing dimly in the dark room. I sense something troubling from the humans, Serath said without greeting. Not fear, but cold determination. Susan smiled slightly. Elder Serath, you're very perceptive. The Council is sending urgent messages to your government, Katrine said. Please, return to the talks. The Vraxians will attack soon. I'm sure they will, Susan replied calmly. You don't understand. Katrine's feathers puffed out in frustration. No species has ever defeated the Vraxians in direct conflict. Susan stood up. Perhaps no species has approached conflict with the Vraxians the way humans will. Far away, on the human starbase Artemis, Admiral Frank Nelson looked at the large tactical display. Red dots representing Vraxian ships were moving toward human space. Status report, he ordered. Lieutenant Diane Powell stood straight as she answered. All defense systems are active. Fleet units are in position, but running dark. Civilian evacuations from border colonies are 90% complete. Frank nodded. And Protocol Thunderbolt. Ready to activate on your command, sir. The communications officer spoke up. Admiral, we're receiving urgent messages from the Galactic Council. They're begging us to return to negotiations. Frank didn't look away from the display. Send our standard response. Yes, sir. Thank you for your concern. The situation is under control. Diane stepped closer to Frank. Sir, the Council doesn't understand. They think we're being stubborn or foolish. Let them think what they want. Frank replied. We've been preparing for this possibility since we first met the Vraxians 3 years ago. But, sir, shouldn't we tell them about our plans? Frank turned to look at her. Lieutenant, what's the first rule of strategy? Never reveal your true capabilities until necessary, Diane answered. Exactly. Frank turned back to the display. The Council species negotiate from a position of fear. We don't. That's something they can't understand. The tactical officer called out, Vraxian fleet accelerating, sir. They'll reach Bradley's world in 6 hours. Frank's face remained calm. Right on schedule. Send the code to all fleet commanders. The wolf is hunting. They'll know what to do. Diane watched as blue dots on the display began to move. Human ships, hidden until now. Activating and taking up positions. Sir, she said quietly, do you think the Council knows what they've done? What do you mean, Lieutenant? By pushing us to compromise with the Vraxians, by expecting us to act from fear. Frank's eyes were steady as he watched the display. They're about to learn an important lesson about humanity, Lieutenant. We prefer peace, we truly do. He paused as the first reports of Vraxian ships entering human space came in. But we prepare for war like no other species in the galaxy. Vraxian Commander Droketh stood tall on the bridge of his flagship, the Merciless Victory. His gray skin gleamed under the red lights, and all 4 of his arms were crossed in a posture of confidence. Begin the attack, he ordered. These humans will learn what happens when they reject Vraxian demands. The Vraxian fleet moved toward Bradley's world, the outermost human colony. Droketh smiled, showing his sharp teeth. His records showed the planet had minimal defenses. He expected an easy victory. Commander, we're detecting unusual energy readings, a sensor officer reported. Droketh frowned. Explain. The readings are coming from small satellites around the planet. There. Suddenly, bright lights flashed across space. Hidden defense platforms activated all around the Vraxian ships. "Shields failing," shouted an officer as the first wave of Vraxian ships exploded. Droketh's confidence vanished. "How is this possible? Our intelligence said this colony was defenseless." Captain Alicia Rodriguez watched from the bridge of the human destroyer Freedom. Her ship and 12 others were hidden behind Bradley's world's moon. "The automated defense network is working perfectly," reported her tactical officer. 23 enemy ships destroyed, 42 damage. Alicia nodded. "The Vraxians are confused. Now for Phase 2. She opened a channel to all ships. "This is Captain Rodriguez. Execute flanking maneuver Delta. Remember your training. These are the tactics we've prepared for." The human ships moved out from behind the moon. They didn't attack the Vraxian front lines. Instead, they targeted the supply and support vessels in the rear. On the tactical display, Alicia watched as her ships broke through the Vraxian formation. The enemy was unprepared for the human speed and coordination. "They expected us to defend in place," Alicia said quietly. "They don't understand human tactics." From a safe distance, Council representatives Lisa Morgan and Peter Wright observed the battle from their neutral observer ship. "I can't believe what I'm seeing," Peter said, watching the tactical display. "The humans aren't just surviving. They're winning." Lisa nodded. "Look at how they're fighting. They're not trying to destroy the main Vraxian fleet. They're cutting off their supply lines and isolating smaller groups." The Aviri observer, Katrine, fluttered her wings in surprise. "This strategy, it's unlike anything in our records. The Vraxians always overwhelm with direct force. No species has ever tried this approach. It's called divide and conquer," Lisa explained. "It's from Earth's military history. When facing a stronger enemy, you don't attack their strength directly." "But why didn't your people tell the Council about these capabilities?" Katrine asked. Peter smiled slightly. "Would you tell your potential enemies exactly how you would fight them?" "We're not enemies," Katrine protested. "No," Lisa said, "but information spreads. The Council has never been good at keeping secrets." The ship's communication system beeped. "Incoming message from Vraxian Command," the computer announced. The screen showed Commander Droketh. His usual confident posture was gone. 2 of his arms were tending to a wound on his side. "Council observers," he growled, "demand that the humans cease this attack. This is not honorable combat." Peter leaned forward. "Commander, you attacked a human colony. How did you expect them to respond?" "Not like this. Their tactics are unusual, dishonorable." Lisa joined Peter at the screen. "Peace was always our preference, Commander. But preparing for war, that's our specialty." As the transmission ended, they watched the tactical display. The human forces had surrounded half of the Vraxian fleet. The other half was retreating in disorder. "They never stood a chance," Peter said quietly. "No," Lisa replied. "And this is just the beginning." 6 weeks passed since the first battle. The Galactic Council met in emergency session every day. On the large screens around the chamber, reports of Vraxian defeats flashed one after another. "This is impossible," muttered Zolthep, the council leader. "The Vraxians have conquered 3 advanced civilizations. How are humans defeating them so easily?" A message alert sounded. "Urgent report from our spy network," announced the council's information officer. The main screen lit up with new information. The council members leaned forward, reading with wide eyes. "Project Firewall." Zolthep read aloud. "What is this human technology?" In a secure lab on Earth, engineer Kevin Davis checked the final calculations on his tablet. Beside him, scientist Carol Turner adjusted controls on a large machine. "Shield frequency disruptor ready for deployment to the fleet," Carol said, making a note on her own tablet. "This should cut through Vraxian defenses like they're not even there." Kevin nodded. 3 years of studying their shield technology is finally paying off. A communication screen lit up, showing Admiral Frank Nelson. "Status report," he demanded. Project Firewall is ready, Admiral, Kevin replied. We can deploy to all frontline ships within 48 hours. Excellent, Frank said. The Vraxians still think we were unprepared when we left the peace talks. They have no idea we've been planning this for years. Carol looked up. Sir, our intelligence says the Council is trying to find out what we're doing. Their spy networks are very active. Frank's face showed no concern. Let them look. By the time they understand our strategy, this will be over. On the bridge of the destroyer Freedom, Captain Alicia Rodriguez studied the tactical display. Red dots showed Vraxian supply ships moving between their bases. Target these convoy routes, she ordered, marking points on the display. Not the military bases, not the warships, just the supply lines. Her tactical officer looked confused. Captain, we could push directly to their main fleet with our new weapons. Why focus on supply ships? Alicia smiled. Because that's not how humans fight wars, Lieutenant. We don't just destroy armies. We make it impossible for them to function. In the Council observation post, Lisa Morgan showed Peter Wright the latest battle reports. Look at this pattern, she said, pointing to the map. The humans aren't engaging the main Vraxian fleets at all. Peter studied the display. They're systematically taking out supply depots, fuel stations, repair facilities. They're dismantling the Vraxian support network. It's like watching someone take apart a machine piece by piece, Lisa said. No other species fights this way. The door opened, and Zolthep entered with several council members. Their faces showed worry and confusion. We need answers, Zolthep demanded. What is Project Firewall? How did humans develop countermeasures to Vraxian technology so quickly? Lisa and Peter exchanged glances. They didn't develop it quickly, Peter explained. They've been working on it for 3 years, since first contact with the Vraxians. But the peace talks only started 3 months ago, said one council member, his tentacles twitching in confusion. Exactly, Lisa said. Humans always hope for peace, but prepare for war, Peter finished. Zolthep's 3 eyes blinked rapidly. And this military strategy of attacking supply lines instead of fleets. Admiral Jack Wilson is applying Earth's history of guerrilla warfare on an interstellar scale, Lisa explained. Something alien civilizations never developed because of their different evolutionary paths. The Vraxians expect direct confrontation, Peter added. They don't know how to respond to this approach. Zolthep looked at the battle display, where human ships continued their methodical dismantling of the Vraxian war machine. We've underestimated humanity, he said quietly. Terribly underestimated them. The Grand Council chamber was completely silent when the doors opened. Every alien representative turned to stare at the human who walked in. Chris Bennett, wearing a simple dark blue suit, walked calmly to the center of the room. For 8 weeks, no human had entered this chamber. The Council had sent dozens of messages begging the humans to return to negotiations. Ambassador Bennett, Zolthep said, rising from his seat. His 3 eyes blinked rapidly with surprise. We welcome humanity's return to the peace process. Chris nodded politely. Thank you, Chairperson Zolthep. However, I must clarify that I am not here to rejoin the previous negotiations. Murmurs spread through the chamber. The Aviri representatives fluttered their wings nervously. Then why have you come? Asked the Korsian delegate, his crystal body reflecting the room's lights. I bring a request from Earth's government, Chris said. He placed a small device on the table that projected a document into the air. We ask that the Galactic Council formally declare its neutrality in the current conflict between humanity and the Vraxian Empire. The chamber erupted in confused voices. Zolthep raised his hands for quiet. Neutrality, he asked. But the purpose of this council is to prevent conflicts, not stand aside while they happen. Chris remained calm. We understand the council's purpose. However, humanity has determined that direct resolution with the Vraxians is the most efficient path forward. Efficient. The Melosian elder Serath floated forward, her translucent form glowing with emotion. We have reports of battles across 12 star systems. The Vraxian fleet is in retreat, but they still possess planet-destroying weapons. This conflict could escalate further. That is precisely why we request your neutrality, Chris explained. Any intervention now could prolong the conflict. The Drulkan ambassador waved his tentacles angrily. This is madness. Two major galactic powers destroying each other while we watch. Chris turned to face the Drulkan. With respect, Ambassador, we're not destroying each other. We're establishing a new understanding with the Vraxians. Understanding. Zolthep looked confused. They attack your worlds. Yes, Chris agreed. And we responded. Now we're approaching the next phase. The council chamber grew quiet again as the representatives exchanged worried glances. What next phase? Asked Katrine, the Aviri representative. Chris looked around the room slowly before answering. The Vraxian High Command has sent us a direct communication channel request. We intend to speak with them directly, without intermediaries. But why? Zolthep asked. The Council has centuries of diplomatic experience. We can help reach a peaceful solution. Chris smiled slightly. Chairperson, with all respect, your diplomatic approach is based on compromise from fear. That's not how humanity resolves conflicts. Then how do you resolve them? Asked the Korgian delegate. By demonstrating strength, then offering mercy, Chris replied. The Vraxians now understand our strength. Soon, they will understand our mercy. Zolthep stepped closer to Chris. Ambassador, I beg you to reconsider. We fear what may happen if two such powerful forces continue this conflict. Chris nodded. Your concern is noted, but this isn't stubbornness on our part. He looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of each council member. This is mercy. The quickest path to peace is to let us handle this directly. And if we refuse? Asked the Drulkan ambassador. If the council votes to intervene. Chris picked up his device from the table. Then you would be working against peace, not for it. He bowed slightly. The choice is yours. Humanity hopes you will make the right one. As Chris turned to leave, Zolthep called after him. Ambassador, is this truly what humanity wants? War instead of peace. Chris paused at the door. We never wanted war, Chairperson. We simply understand that sometimes, to achieve real peace, you must first demonstrate that you're fully prepared for war. The Galactic Council's Observation Center was filled with representatives from all 12 member species. They crowded around the large displays showing the current state of the human-Vraxian conflict. They're retreating, Katrine said, her feathers rippling with surprise. The entire Vraxian fleet is pulling back from all fronts. Zolthep studied the tactical display. Has humanity launched some new weapon? Some devastating attack? No, said the analysis officer. That's what's strange. The humans have stopped advancing. They've created a perimeter around Vraxian territory, but aren't pushing forward. Let me see those Vraxian communications we intercepted, Zolthep ordered. A data screen appeared, showing translated Vraxian messages. The council members read in silence. This can't be right, muttered the Drulkan ambassador. The Vraxians are afraid. Not just of human weapons, Sireth the Melosian elder added, her glow pulsing as she read. They fear human psychology. Their reports call humans the species that walks away. Katrine looked confused. I don't understand. Why would walking away from peace talks frighten the Vraxians? They've always seen withdrawal as weakness. That's exactly why, said Lisa Morgan, entering the observation center with Peter Wright. The two human observers had been given special permission to join the council's team. Explain, Zolthep demanded. Peter pointed to the battle display. Look at what's happening here. When the Vraxians attacked after we left the peace talks, they expected either a desperate defense or immediate surrender. Instead, Lisa continued, they discovered we had been preparing for conflict all along. We left the talks not from fear, but from confidence. This challenges everything in Vraxian culture, Peter explained. They respect strength above all else. When humans walked away calmly, it wasn't the act of a weak species afraid of war. It was the act of a species so prepared for war that they had no need to fear it. Lisa finished. On the bridge of the human flagship Determination, General Sharon Miller watched the Vraxian fleet's movement on the tactical display. "They're still retreating, General," reported her tactical officer. "We could press the advantage. Our forces could reach their homeworld in 3 days." Sharon shook her head. "That's not our objective. Open a corridor in Sector 7. Give them a clear path out." "A path out?" The officer looked confused. "But we have them trapped." "Exactly," Sharon replied. "And now we show them that we could destroy them, but choose not to." She looked around at her bridge crew. "Humanity didn't walk away from peace. We walked away from pointless negotiations to show the Vraxians what real strength looks like." Back in the Council Observation Center, new information appeared on the screens. "The humans are opening their lines," Zolthep said in disbelief. "They're giving the Vraxians an escape route. They could press forward and destroy the Vraxian forces completely," the Korsian delegate noted, his crystal structure flashing with confusion. "Why stop now?" Lisa and Peter exchanged knowing glances. "Because destruction was never the goal," Lisa explained. "This was about understanding." "I don't understand," said Katrine. "Exactly," Peter replied. "The Council negotiates from fear. The Vraxians negotiate from dominance. Humans negotiate from a position of strength tempered by mercy." A new alert sounded, and everyone turned to the main screen. A message from the Vraxian High Command was displayed. "The Vraxians are requesting direct peace talks with humanity." Zolthep read in shock. "Without council mediation. And humanity has agreed," Lisa said, nodding to the next line of the message. Zolthep's 3 eyes blinked rapidly. "What does this mean for the future of galactic diplomacy?" "It means," Peter said quietly, "that the galaxy is learning that walking away isn't always a retreat. Sometimes it's the most direct path forward." The Grand Council chamber was filled beyond capacity. Representatives from all council species were present, along with observers from 30 other galactic civilizations. News of what had happened between humans and Vraxians had spread across the galaxy. Chairperson Zolthep called for order as the main doors opened. The room fell silent. Ambassador George Harris entered first, walking calmly to the center of the chamber. Behind him came a tall Vraxian with ceremonial armor and markings of high rank. Krell, the Vraxian High Commander. Whispers spread through the chamber. No one had ever seen a human and Vraxian walk side by side without hostility. "The Council recognizes Ambassador Harris of Earth and High Commander Krell of the Vraxian Empire," Zolthep announced, his voice carrying a note of disbelief. George nodded respectfully. "Thank you, Chairperson. We have come to present the terms of the peace treaty between humanity and the Vraxian Empire." Krell stepped forward, his 4 arms in a position of formal respect. "A treaty we have negotiated directly, without intermediaries." A data file appeared on all screens around the chamber. The council members read in stunned silence. "These terms," Zolthep said eventually, "they are surprisingly fair to the Vraxians." "More than fair," muttered the Drulkan ambassador. "The humans could have demanded much more after their victory." George smiled slightly. "Victory was never our goal, Ambassador. Understanding was." Krell turned to face the council. "The humans have shown us something no other species has in our long history of conquest. They demonstrated superior strength, then offered mercy when they could have destroyed us." "We don't understand," said Katrine, her feathers flat against her body in confusion. "You attacked their worlds. They defeated your forces. Why would they not demand significant concessions?" "Because," George explained, "that would only lead to future conflict. True peace comes from mutual respect, not from humiliation of the defeated." Krell nodded. "The humans walked away from your peace talks because they understood something you did not. that the Vraxian Empire respects strength above all. By leaving those talks, they showed confidence in their strength, and by offering generous terms after proving that strength, George continued, we showed that humans prefer peace, even when we could have war. Zolthep studied the treaty again. This creates trade agreements, cultural exchanges, even mutual defense pacts. You're not just at peace, you're allies. Yes, Krell said firmly. The Vraxian Empire now considers humanity our most trusted ally. They understand power in ways no other species has demonstrated. The council chamber buzzed with surprised conversations. Zolthep raised his hands for quiet. Ambassador Harris, he said slowly, when you walked out of this chamber 3 months ago, the council believed you were making a terrible mistake. We thought you were choosing war over peace. George shook his head. We never walked away from peace, Chairperson. We just found a more direct path to it. But the council has negotiated truces for centuries, protested the Corrigan delegate. Our diplomatic traditions are based on compromise and gradual progress. And those are valuable, George acknowledged. But humanity has learned through our own bloody history that sometimes the path to lasting peace requires showing that you're fully prepared for war, yet still choose peace. Krell placed one of his 4 hands on George's shoulder in a gesture of respect. The humans have a saying that captured our attention. Speak softly and carry a big stick. They are a species that prefers words but masters weapons. This is something Vraxians understand. George looked around the chamber. The galactic political landscape is changing. Humanity isn't interested in conquest or dominance, but we will always protect ourselves and our allies. And now, Krell added, that includes the Vraxian Empire. As the council representatives began discussing this unprecedented alliance, George whispered to Krell, think they'll ever understand. The Vraxian commander's mouth formed what passed for a smile in his species. Perhaps not, but they will learn to respect the species that walks away.